Hi, it's Becky, and I'm going to address formative and summative assessments along with their reliability and validity and any biases. So with formative assessments, this is something that you do ongoing. So this forms the learning. So this is going over all the little bits and pieces of the projects as you're building up to whatever subject you're learning. For example, I'll say I'm a math teacher and I'm teaching fractions. So with this, I would do things like creating models for the students. So this could be using shapes like the rods or diagrams, pie diagrams, hands-on manipulative tools and tasks that kids can actually understand numerators versus denominator and actually building a whole from fractions and understanding little pieces, and again, collection of the whole. So that would be something hands-on, potentially worksheets. Like worksheets are really great. And then something that could be digital would be using like Khan Academy or Splash Math. I really do enjoy Khan Academy because there's so much visual representation there. There's a lot of videos. I like the coloring. I like that it goes over every specific standard and order and builds off of each other. So those would be some tools I could utilize. Now, talking about reliability of the assessment versus validity. So I actually did some research on this because, my gosh, looking up those two words on Google, you can find all sorts of information. But the reliability is really ultimately is the results are consistent, and validity would be the results satisfy the objective. So some things that I thought about, questions that would arise with reliability are, have I tested with repetition? Am I repeating this assessment again and again and making sure that the students actually really understand, even if I give them different fractions, for example, the outcome? How consistent is the information I am presenting with information of the other sources I am giving the students? So making sure that all of my lessons are actually consistent and with the information, for example, on Khan that I give them. So I'm not teaching them something completely different and they're lost in their learning. So as far as validity, does the student work and test accurately represent what I want the students to learn? So particularly with fractions, that will be a little bit more simple, right? And much more of points, but really making sure that the students' information that I'm presenting to them, and when I go and ask them specific questions, that they are actually hitting those learning objectives. As far as bias goes, I think it's really important to make sure that you're focusing on the students' assets. So am I meeting the needs of all different learning differences that are in the classroom? Am I meeting the needs of students who are English learners? Can they understand the information that I'm providing to them? If I have a student who has dyslexia, do I have accurate objects for that student to understand? If a student has dyscalculia, I think that's how you say it, dyscalculia, that is essentially dyslexia in a math form with numbers. Do I have enough models for that student so that they don't get confused when writing those numbers on a piece of paper? Making sure that the group projects were divided evenly. So should I implement group projects? Did I make sure that they were divided evenly, that everyone got to participate? Making sure I focus on individual students' assets and hitting their needs. And basically making sure that there's a lot of differentiation in the learning. I think it's important too to have a lot of student-led learning. So it's important to have reliability and validity, but also for this to stick with the students, right? So I think it's really important to make sure that you're trying different types of learning styles, whether it be visual, kinesthetic, auditory, and making sure all the students have access to all those. So I think those are just some of the questions that would come up. And by answering those questions and making sure that I allow for time allotment for the students to go through and move through these examples individually at their own level, that I think that the overall assessments would be appropriate. And at the end, that they would be able to perform a really good summative assessment because they would have hit all the different benchmarks.